Welcome to the All-Eers podcast, powered by HD Media.
For the 14th time in this podcast history, lend me your ear. No, not the ears that you hear, but you will also be hearing this. You're not seeing me, but you will be able to hear this. And this is the All Eers podcast, a WVU-based podcast focusing everything in regards to West Virginia University athletics. And we are in the off-season portion of this podcast. So far, we've talked with two Mountaineers, one former, one current. And a couple weeks ago, we talked with Honor Huff. And 2 weeks ago, Nathan Adrian. Last week, we were pleased to be joined by Alexis Bordas, who recently signed with the Mountaineer women's basketball team and coach Mark Kellogg. And we're just continuing along this theme. And we have a great guest on tap for today. And a name, a voice, a guy that a lot of people remember, especially during the good old days of Mountaineer football under Coach Don Neal. That's Brian Jozwiak. He was one of just a very rare group of Mountaineer football players to be named an All-American. He was also a part of a rare group to be drafted in the first round of the NFL draft, and we are pleased to be joined by former offensive lineman Brian Jozwiak. Brian, welcome to the program.
I'll tell you what, Taylor, I appreciate you having me on this gig, and from what I hear tell, I'm the first football representative from our Mountaineer history to join you, so I'm excited about that. I appreciate you thinking of me.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, no pressure at all, by the way, just so you know, no pressure at all.
Okay. Lead me where you need to go, brother. Hey. No, I'm really honored. You know, I'm sitting here, I'm wearing a West Virginia ball cap, you know what I'm saying? So, and a West Virginia T-shirt, and I sport that proudly everywhere I go. And, you know, we've got a heck of a brand, and we got a lot of people that it represents. And, hey, it's my pleasure to talk about it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, talk about that, because just hearing what you were just saying, I know before we started this, I was going to mention the Mountaineer portion of your career later on, but let's start there, because obviously just from what you said, you have an immense pride in, one, representing it, but also, two, wearing the flying WV, the old gold and blue, as many say as well. Talk about that now that your career is over and you know you haven't played in well over 40 years in Morgantown. How much pride do you still take in wearing the flying WV and also representing the gold and blue?
I drive a lot. Okay, I don't fly. So whenever I go visit family or friend or what have you, come up Morgantown for a football game, I'm driving, and I've got WV decals on my vehicle, and it's amazing because you know in gas stations or diners or wherever you're at, that West Virginia emblem, that WV, see that might be one of the most really cool logos there is, because yes, that WV is WV with the U. You got to add the U on it to make it truly WVU representation. But for us, you don't have to have gone to West Virginia. You don't have to be a West Virginia alumni, because that WV represents all West Virginians, wherever you are. And it ties us together. And when you're walking around the gas station and you see somebody over there with that WV on their tag or wherever you go, what do you say? Hey, where are you from? Where are you from? Hey, where are you from? And they'll turn and they'll look and they'll go, Bridgeport. And you're like, you got to be kidding me. And it happens, let me tell you, it happens to me so often that it's just an enjoyable experience because it does. It represents West Virginia and everything West Virginia stands for, and that's good stuff, because there's a lot of great people that live there and have lived there and have spread out across the, you know, not only the nation but the planet. You see it all the time. So yeah, man, I wear it. You know, I know being prideful is not a good thing, but to be proud of something, ain't nothing wrong with that. And you know, coming out of Baltimore, 45. Oh my God, 1981. So 45 years ago. What? I mean, that's just a mind freak in and of itself, brother. Let me tell you. But yeah, coming to Morgantown 45 years ago, there's a great quote in one of my favorite movies, and it's about changing your stars. A Knight's Tale, right? Heath Ledger, right? He says in there, is it really truly possible to change one's stars? And, getting out of Maryland and having an opportunity to play D1 football, especially at WVU during that period of time, that first stepping stones of what Don Nealon was building, to be part of that. And then so many years later, I'm just, West Virginia, West Virginia is home for me. And every time I get a chance to come up there for whatever reason, is a real treat. Other than in the wintertime when it's really freaking cold, I'd rather just stay here in Florida, to be honest with you.
Oh, come on. You offensive linemen have to love the winter. Come on now. Don't say that.
I don't mind it when it's 50 degrees down here and everybody's all bundled up. I'm still walking around in shorts.
You probably get a couple of eyes looking at you like, what the heck is he doing wearing shorts in 40, 50-degree weather?
That's a fact. That's a fact. It's just good stuff, man. It is good stuff. And again, we, over these many years, the alumni base that you get to know and teammates that you keep in touch with and that brotherhood that has been developed there, and it's just really special. It's good stuff. And of course now through what's going on there with our varsity club and KJ Johnson took over that, and KJ's just doing a fantastic job and keeping the alumni base, welcome. And I just saw where the baseball team had the 96 team reunion and then the all baseball reunion this past weekend. And, 250 guys show up. That says something about Mountaineer athletics and what it means to all of us. And, you come out of high school and you go to a college and you're still a kid. And the objective is to come out on the other side an adult. And you got to figure it out along the way. You got to take your bumps and bruises, but it's where you really grow up. And we got to do it in Morgantown, West Virginia, and the surroundings. And of course, I got to do it playing football, which I cherish that like maybe no other.
So along that, sorry, not to cut you off, but along that line, then, you were recruited as a defensive lineman. Then you made the switch in 1983 to the offensive line, which is where you had the most success in Morgantown, which led to being drafted in the first round of the NFL draft. Talk about that switch. What went into that switch? What can you recall from those discussions switching from defensive to offensive line in 1983?
Actually, I'm gonna offer this. The switch came at the end of the football season in 1981. I signed, of course, I came as a freshman in 1981. I was one of two incoming freshman defensive linemen. So it was me, Ernie Anderson, and Bill Kurlavich. I don't know if you've ever had the experience of meeting Bill Kurlavich.
Oh, yeah.
But Bill Kurlavich, okay, enough said, correct?
Yeah, but enough said.
All right. I had never experienced anything like Bill Kurlavich growing up in Catonsville, Maryland, I can assure you. So it's me for the first 3 days. It's me and Ernie Anderson and Kurlavich, and he's kicking the shit out of us. Oh, excuse me. Kicking the snot out of us. I apologize.
It's all good.
And then, of course, the upperclassmen came in. Well, here you got this kid from Catonsville, me, who's, 6'5.5", almost 6'6", about 300 pounds. I'm the biggest guy on the team. So we're going in. I have a great camp as a true freshman. I'm going into our opening game as the starting middle guard, nose guard. So I'm starting as a true freshman. And it's Thursday before our home opener. I think it was a home game. I can't remember. Might have been on it. Anyway, it's our first game coming up on Saturday. And we were in a goal line scrimmage. And of course, this was 81, so it was before knee braces and that kind of thing. And we were in a goal line scrimmage. We did 10 live ones versus ones goal line stand plays. We put the ball on the 3-yard line, and it was, full throttle. And I got high load, which back in them days you were involved in what was called a cut zone, and I got crippled. Hit my right knee. Had a what's called the unhappy triad, right? So it was torn medial meniscus, torn partial tear of the ACL, partial tear of the MCL. And they call them partial tears. It doesn't break. It's like a stretched ligament, if you will. And so they went in and scoped me, and I'm on crutches, and I started running about 4 weeks after surgery. I was part of the arthroscopic knee surgery. At the time, we had a guy named Doug Bowers. And Doug Bowers was on some of the original arthroscopy teams that used that new surgical technique back then for, non-invasive. You recall before that, they would give you what was called a zipper for a freaking, a cartilage tear. Well, I was scoped. Hell, I was running 4 weeks. And 2 weeks later, I was back into the lineup, finishing out the year 81. So same damn thing happens. I'm in a goal line scrimmage, and I get my left knee whacked. Monday morning, I'm in surgery. I get surgery. They fix it. And when I woke up, my mom and dad were in the room, and Coach Nealon walks in with Carl Battershell was the O-line coach, and of course, Kurlavich. And they all came into my room, and they asked how I was feeling, and Kurlav had his head kind of down, and Nealon said to my mom and dad, "Listen, we're gonna move your boy to offense," because again, this was before knee braces, so they figured that because I was so tall and I had a hard time bending down like that, I was gonna be susceptible to knee injuries, and my career was going to get cut short. So they moved me to offense. I took a medical red shirt in 81, and then 82, of course, 81, we went down and played the Peach Bowl and kicked the crap out of Florida. And they came back, and I was on offense. So I was relearning everything. I think I was like number 3. I didn't even make the trip out to Oklahoma when we went out there and kicked the tar out of those guys. But about halfway through the year, 1982, against Rutgers, I can't believe I remember all this crap. It was against Rutgers, and we were up there, and Rutgers had a defensive lineman named Bill Pickle, they called him Pickle. He ended up playing for the Oakland Raiders back in the day. Anyway, Kurt Teal sprained his ankle, and they called my name. And boy, my butt got into a pucker. I went, uh-oh, here we go. Here we go. And I hit that field, and I played pretty much the whole second quarter, I guess it happened, from what I recall. And I went at halftime, they came out, and finished the game. And when Kurt Kill got healthy, they moved him to right tackle, and I played the offensive line from there forward, which was a great move for me, obviously. Ended up as a consensus All-American there in 85. But it was just a great move for me because I really liked what the most valuable thing in an offensive lineman's toolbox is? I know the snap count and you don't. I know when we're going to snap the ball, and you don't. Now, as a defensive lineman, you got to be reactive. You got to be able to, you get the ball snapped, the guy in front of you moves, and then you move. As an offensive lineman, I'm moving first. You know what kind of an advantage that is when you're a nut job that loves the greater guys? I like the great guys. You know what a road grader is, right?
That sounds
road
familiar.
Grade 'em, right? Road grade them. That's what that, and to move from defense to offense, I played offense with a defensive type disposition and mentality, but I had some tools in the arsenal and some really good coaches. And of course, when you're on the offensive line, you got guys all around you, man. I had, Scott Barrows as a guard. I had, Rob Bennett as a tight end. I had Ron Wolfley as a fullback. I mean, come on, man. And the list of quarterbacks from Hostetler to Kevin White, Ollie Luck, I mean, come on now. I mean, that was some. I was happy to be on those offenses because we won a lot of football games back in them days, and of course we can say proudly that we're part of, the history. When we got there in the '80s, we were building on what the guys did in the '70s, the Tommy Pridemores and those guys, and the Danny Buggses, and then you go past that and you get back to the Freddie Wyatt, and Tom Ullman, and Sammy Huff, and then you get in before. So there's a great history, Mountaineer football. I mean, and to be part of that, whoop, and to be relevant. Here we are talking some 45 years later, and still be relevant in the lore of Mountaineer football is a really special place to be. Mountaineer fans have great memories, and they appreciate and they love their Mountaineer football. They love Mountaineer athletics, but Mountaineer football. Back in my day, on any given Saturday for a home game, that was the second largest city in the state of West Virginia, that football stadium, by population. That's a cool place to be, man. Cool place to be.
Absolutely.
So anyway.
Yeah. No, we're talking with Brian Jozwiak, former Mountaineer offensive lineman. We're going to take a quick break here, and we're going to talk. I know Brian mentioned there just a second ago a lot of different games that he was a part of, especially early on in his career. We're going to talk about a game in particular on the other side of this break. This is the All Eers podcast.
As the game gets faster, stronger, more dynamic, your equipment has to keep up. Introducing the Riddell Axiom, the next evolution in football protection, designed to match the speed and strength of today's athlete. Contact West Virginia Riddell representative Casey Turley at 304-552-5960. Gear up, play smart, stay protected.
HD Media Sports is your one-stop destination for top high school and college sports coverage in the Mountain State. From Morgantown to Mingo County, our award-winning reporters keep you informed about your favorite teams and players, including exclusive coverage of the Marshall Thundering Herd and the West Virginia Mountaineers. Follow HD Media Sports on Facebook to stay up to date on the latest news, features, and game coverage.
Rolling along here on the All Eers podcast with our latest guest, Brian Jozwiak, former offensive lineman for the Mountaineers. And Brian, you mentioned a plethora of games in that last segment before we took a break. I want to talk about a specific game in particular, and let me jog back your memory. October 27th, 1984, okay? WVU Penn State. WVU entered the game on a 25-game losing streak against the Nittany Lions. WVU prevails, winning 17-14. When I mention that date and that game, what comes to mind?
Well, I'm looking at the picture right here on my wall. I'm looking at the picture of that Penn State game when the crowd's tearing the goalpost down. There's 38 seconds left on the clock. When you bring up, I got goosebumps on top of goosebumps right now, my friend. You have no idea. That's the only football game I've ever seen or been associated with where nobody sat down the entire game. It was just absolutely one of the most electrifying experiences that I've ever been a part of. And it was just, that's a special game, for all of us, because we shook a monkey off the back that had been there for so long, and we just, we knew that 84 team, first of all, was special, and we had just beaten a pretty daggone good Boston College team. We were a really, really good football team, and with a bunch of guys that weren't necessarily in today's world, we give them stars, 4-star, 5-star. We had a bunch of dogs, man. We just had a bunch of, I don't even think half of us would have a star. I was probably a moon, you know what I mean? So at the end of the day, he had a bunch of guys. Coach Nealon put a team together that believed in each other and had built on, what, Darryl Talley and those guys, Dennis Folks and those guys, Oliver Luck, when Nealon took over, we took a torch and then that got passed on to us. So 84 was my junior year. And, we had a football team that was pretty damn special. And, from Monday morning, we believed that we were indeed going to win the football game. In fact, we would go to our place was Cheat Lake, Lakeview, right? So when we stayed for home games, they would bus us out there after our walkthrough at the stadium, and then we'd go out there and spend the night and do team meetings and have a little evening, and we'd watch a movie together. And I recall going into that game, we all went down there after our meetings, after we had eaten, and we'd go in our auditorium, and there was just a podium there. I don't remember there being a TV screen. We're going to watch a movie together. We're all just laying on the floor, and Nealon came in and started talking to us, excuse me, and took us into a designed place in our mind's eye, envisioning the game tomorrow. And he basically walked us through the game. He called plays and he said, called names. He said, this is going to happen and this is going to happen. And we're going to win this football game. And we believed that so vividly. And we had already played it and won the game. So no matter what, go out and do your job. Soak in the experience because it's going to be electric. If I'm not mistaken, it was the first night game. It was the first time the lights came on. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's my recollection. I've had a lot of concussions over my lifetime, Taylor, so you never know. But this is my recollection.
I trust your judgment.
All right, so we go out and we play the game, and our starting center, Bill Lay, got hurt. So Jack Kessler goes in. There was an injury in the secondary, so Rich Rodriguez goes in. Rich ends up with an interception. Jack and our two guards neutralized. They had a big-time defensive lineman in there. I can't remember the guy's name, but we kicked his butt in there. And, of course, one of the great runs in Mountaineer history is the handoff to Pat Randolph off the right side, led by pulling guard Scotty Barrows. And Scott finds his way through and lays a hit on their safety and springs Pat White into history. And, it just, there's 38 seconds left on the clock and there's people hanging off the goalpost. Are you kidding me? It's something it's pandemonium, okay? And of course, we're trying to get guys off the field. Coaches are yelling, get back on the sideline, and the goalpost is starting to come down. So that's when Paterno he starts running out onto the field, and Nealon kind of went out to meet him amidst all this freaking pandemonium that's going on. And the scene, obviously, through video clips that I've seen, I see Nealon grab. They kind of embrace real fast, and Paterno turns around and he waves his arms and he takes his team off the field, and they let the clock drain out. And so we officially didn't even finish the game. He just conceded. So years later, I asked Coach Nealon, I said, Coach, man, what did you say to him? He said, I told him, get off my field. Oh, man. So, no, but that was a, and I'll tell you something, what we forget is that, we played Penn State, Boston College that year back-to-back, beat them. Both games, they tear the goalpost down. We were 7-1 at that time, and I think we were ranked like 4th in the nation. And we had a stretch of about 5 games that were the most physical games that we played. I mean, back in them days, man, that early Big East football, with Pitt, Penn State, Maryland, Virginia Tech, Boston College, Virginia was involved in that circle of, Louisville was pretty, there was some good football teams back then. Rutgers, Temple, anyway, we played those physical games and we got really beat up, and we lost to Virginia, Rutgers, and Temple. So we went from being like high on the horse, climbing the mountain, to, having all kinds of problems going on. We didn't have the answers, and we were getting beat by teams we should have never got beat if we had our arsenal, and our arsenal was weak. So at that time, so we finished out the season, and we got a bowl bid. And we had a team meeting, and Coach Nealon came in, dismissed the coaches, and said, hey, here's the deal. We got a bowl bid down there in Texas. We drew TCU, Texas Christian. They got an All-American running back down there named Kenny Davis, and they're the Horned Toads, and that's their home state. Now, I'll accept the bid, and we'll go down there, but we ain't going down there to party or anything like that. We'll do the functions and what we have to do, but we're going down there to win a football game and prove to the world that those games early this year weren't just flukes, that we were indeed that kind of football team. And at that time, Taylor, we had internal issues. I can remember headlines in the Daily Athenaeum or whatever that was, the Dominion Post was writing stuff about we had all kinds of internal problems, and basically what Nealon said is, you got to build a wall, man. You can't be paying attention to that crap out there. Build a wall. This is us. And we got control of what we're going to control. So you guys decide. And he basically yelled at us a little bit. And we all sat in there and I think it was Freddie Smalls stood up and started saying stuff about, man, what's wrong with us, man? We're this, we're that. We did this, we did that. And then Ron Wolfley and Dave Preston were the offensive and defensive captains. And those guys got us fired up, and within just a couple of minutes, we were hugging and grabbing on each other, and we're going to go down there and kick TCU's ass. And that's what we did. We went down there, we worked hard. It was like training camp. They busted our tails, man. Woo. But we kicked the snot out of TCU and sent a message to everybody saying, hey, Mountaineer football's for real. We're not a fluke. We had some early games in 81 and 82. And then 83, we go to another bowl. That's when we beat Pitt that year and got a big win over them. And we were just laying the blocks, doing the groundwork for, what ends up being a 20-year career for Coach Nealon, and where we are today is all that's possible through, we build on the shoulders that come before us. And That's a great place to be, and I don't mind being in the middle of that daggone pyramid right there, not a bit.
Well, you mentioned that game against TCU. That game was played in Houston, Texas, in the Astrodome. You all win 31-14 under head coach Don Nehlen. I know you've mentioned him a lot, so let's kind of pivot that way. Talking about Coach Nehlen, a guy that is still talked about to this day. A lot of people still reminisce about his over 2-decade-long career with the Mountaineers. Just talking about a guy like Coach Nehlen that resonates with so many different people, whether it be fans, whether it be players. Two-part question. Who is Coach Nehlen as a coach, but also who is Coach Nehlen as a human being away from the game of football?
Well, first of all, he's the same guy, and no matter what room he's in and no matter who he's around, he's as wholesome as it comes. He's a genuine guy, and he's always there to support. Not only was he the head coach for 20 years, but he never went anywhere else. So he's been a consultant to Mountaineer football every day of his life since he's been there. He's a Mountaineer. He's a true Mountaineer. And every head coach that's ever been there has always welcomed him in and has always consulted him. And, so that in and of itself is special. You don't see that very often, especially in this modern day of college football where guys are bouncing around like yo-yos and going here and going there. And I think, Nehlen's been here his entire coaching career pretty much. All right. So that's a really special thing. And along the way, helping so many people outside of football, all the charitable things that he's done, all the support that he's lended. I mean, he supports a charitable event that we do for Children's Hospital. He's been our honorary chairman every year. He lends he comes to the event. And it's all for Children's Hospital, and that's what he started us going to Children's Hospital as players way back when, hence the commitment to that hospital. But that's just, his backing of Friends of Cole, his understanding of West Virginia. I can remember as a youngster, one of the first things that we did was grassroots, man. We got little vans and drove all over West Virginia as Mountaineer football players wearing our jersey, meeting and greeting. I rode more, little parades and stuff back then, promoting Mountaineer football, promoting the brand, getting people back into the stands, building something special that we'd all appreciate and get behind. And then that WV flying flag emblem comes along early on, and we adopt that, and that becomes the face of the brand. And Nehlen was really, truly the first face of that WV brand. And, that says so much, and to really tell you about him as a person, I got to go back to my recruiting experience. When he would come to my home in Catonsville and sit with my parents and frame out, what the experience will be like if you come to Morgantown and play for me. And I really felt like he cared. And then when I took my visit, mind you, I had just got back from, when I got back from my West Virginia trip, my next trip the following week, I jumped on a Learjet, went to Nebraska. All right. I was getting recruited back then by just about anybody that was out there. Took official visits to Wake Forest, North Carolina, West Virginia, Nebraska. Was getting recruited by, everybody else. And, but the week before the Nebraska trip, Taylor, I was in Morgantown for my official visit. And it just felt right. Brand new facility, young coaches that were antsy to build something special. Guys like Daryl Talley and Oliver Luck and Dennis Folks strutting around in there, remnant of the Frank Signetti crew that bought into what Nealon was going to put together. And I just felt something special. And I got back from that trip, and following weekend flew out to Nebraska. Got back from that trip. My dad picked me up at the airport, and we were driving back. And my dad's like, "Well, what'd you think?" I said, "It was pretty overwhelming, Dad. And I tell you something else too. It's a long way away, man. You and Molly ain't never gonna come see me play. I go to Nebraska." He's like, "Yeah, you're right, son, but don't let that be your decision maker." I said, "Is there any way you could take me back to West Virginia tomorrow?" This was Sunday. He's like, "Man," he goes, "I got to work." I said, "Dad, I need to know, man. Please, would you take me back there?" So he called in and he drove me over the mountain there, and we came back unannounced. We just came back on Monday, and I walked into that facility building, and I got greeted like I won the lottery. "Oh, hey, Brian. Oh, my gosh. Welcome back. Didn't know we were going to see you so soon." I said, "Can I see Coach Nealon?" "Oh, hang on a second. He's on the phone with the president. Hang on a second." And I heard Coach Nealon yell out of his office, "Is that Jozwiak?" Because he saw me come through the parking lot. And he hung up on the president of the school, hung up, "Come on in." So me and my dad went in there, and I knew then. So we go home, and I thank my dad and blah, blah, blah. Anyway, we go home, and that was Monday. And on Thursday, there's a knock at my front door about 7 o'clock in the evening, and my mom answers the door, and it's Coach Nealon, Donnie Young, and Bob Simmons. Bobby Simmons was the one that recruited me out of Maryland, out of Baltimore. And they're standing there, and my mom was like, "Coach Nealon." My dad was sitting in the chair, and I was sitting there in the living room, and as soon as my mother opened the door, you could smell garlic. So they stepped in, and I can't remember. I think it was Donnie Young was holding the bag, and Bob Simmons was holding the bag. And each of them had paper bags of fresh Polish kielbasa. My dad's an old Polak from Buffalo. My dad's like, "What you got in there, Coach?" He's like, I got you 20 pounds of fresh sausage, fresh kielbasa." My dad looked at me and said, "Boy, you're going to Morgantown." I said, "You're right, Dad. You're right." That was his Nealon's secretary's name was Monica Lewandowski, and her dad made sausage from the old country. You know what I mean? So that was my NIL deal, Taylor. My NIL deal was 20 pounds of Polish sausage.
That's a good way to get you in the door there. That's a good way.
Oh, I'm telling you, best decision made, because it was a great ride. I mean, hell, we won a lot of football games. I made friends with people that I'm friends with today. We have a group text that has about 20 guys in it. It's pretty cool that we all stay, in touch with each other through, maybe one or two other guys, but it's a big family of a brotherhood, that's for sure. And that's how I got to Morgantown right there.
So let's spend the last couple of minutes here talking about your event that you just mentioned with Coach Nealon being a part of it, because I do think this is one of the best events in the state. That you guys do a fantastic job. I think this is your 36th year, I read correctly, of you all doing this, which dates back to you being a player. When you talk about this event, first off, kind of give the lay of the land for this, but then go into the details about what led you to doing this and what has consistently brought you back to West Virginia to do this event for the Children's Hospital.
Well, I mean, it starts, like I kind of mentioned there, with Coach Nealon. Coach Nealon and his then wife, Mary Ann, took a liking to Children's Hospital, which really wasn't. It was kind of developing into what is now Children's Hospital. I mean, back then it was the 6th floor, and there was a Dr. Bill Neal. He was a cardiac surgeon there, and he kind of took the reins, and he became the director of Children's Hospital, which was the 6th floor. Coach Nealon and Mary Ann would, take Christmas presents over and do some things with the kids. And one of the traditions that he got going was a relationship with the football players and the kids. So if there were any home game, and I think this probably started in 82. It might have started in 81. I don't know. It might have been 82. But anyway, as soon as it started, I jumped in. I wanted to be part of that because that's the kind of person that I am. And so on home games, we'd get our jerseys and we'd get in a bus and we'd go over to Children's Hospital and we'd go up on the floor and we'd walk in and out of the rooms and the kids didn't know who we were. Most of the parents did. They had more fun with it than the kids sometimes did. But the kids saw that jersey. It didn't matter who you were. You're wearing a Mountaineer jersey, and we're all Mountaineers. And it was a multiple thing, and Coach Neely did it for a number of reasons, or maybe he didn't even know he was doing it, but it teaches you as a person a lot of things. Firstly, obviously anybody can end up in that situation at any given time, and to have a great facility that's designed for children's care is really a special thing if you've got that, and having it right in the backyard was really important to not only Morgantown but West Virginia and the area states that would use that facility. But going in and being part of that, it brought a smile to my face because it made me feel good if I made somebody smile. But then, excuse me, we'd be in the middle of drills and you'd be all, down in the mouth and feeling sorry for yourself. And all he'd have to say was, think about them kids laying over there in the hospital with all them tubes sticking out of them. And you're complaining about a couple of extra sprints. You're supposed to be football players and tough, man. Them are the tough ones, them kids that are going through that stuff. So he used that, excuse me, in the psychological parts of the experience. And, it really meant a lot to me. And I've met over those years, excuse me, let me get a drink of water here. I met families, I keep in touch with a couple of people today that were going through childhood cancer back then that are now, parents and grandparents. And I was the player that went in and visited them all the time, and, how much that meant to them. And so it meant a lot to me, but it meant a lot to them. So we were all gaining something out of it. And great. And so anyway, cut to the chase. When I got done playing football and came back to West Virginia to Morgantown to finish my degree, I always wanted to do something with Children's Hospital. Peggy Myers, was the newly appointed development coordinator for raising money for Children's Hospital. And we all got to be kind of friends, and I met up with Scott Sears, who at the time owned a restaurant in Fairmont, West Virginia. Why Fairmont? At that time, I was married to a girl from Fairmont. And when we came back from Kansas City, that's where we moved to. We were living in Fairmont. And so we struck up this idea, hey, let's do a golf tournament. 37 years ago when this conversation was going on, there really wasn't a whole lot of golf tournaments going on. That wasn't like a big fundraising thing. There was a few, but not many. And we started Windsor's first annual Celebrity Golf Classic. Got some folks involved in the Fairmont area, and we did the first annual tournament out there at Green Hills, and it has progressively snowballed and continued and maintained and grew over these many years. So many guys have played in it. Teams, I got one team, believe it or not, that's coming into its 36th year, never missed a tournament.
That's awesome.
To a point where, we've had some turnover, but it's such loving support for a great cause, and it's grown from being a one-day golf tournament to actually being like a 4-day event now. So guys come in, and I say guys, I'm talking about, my Mountaineer brothers, the Major Harrises, the Darryl Tallies, the Aaron Beasleys, the Owen Schmitz, the Pat Whites. I mean, the list is endless. All. You go back in the day, Pat McAfee played. Tavon Austin and Stedman Bailey cut their teeth on that golf tournament. Never played golf. Matter of fact, I had to go discipline them because they were driving golf carts through the sand traps. So you know what I'm saying. So it's like it's been a real ride, but it's been a great event. Raising money and awareness for Children's Hospital. And now look at Children's Hospital. It's a 10-story building dedicated to children and their families and mom care and to be part of that evolution and is really a special thing, for me to be a part of. But all of us, all these guys that come together, it's a reunion for us, but we all remember going and visiting the kids and being part of that. So it's an umbilical cord to the football program through the relationship with the hospital, with Children's Hospital there. And it's really cool because, like I said, we go Wednesday. We got an event we do at Tipsy Teas out there. That guy jumped on board and he raises that little piece of money. And then Thursday event at Tropics is a dinner. This year we got a real special lineup. I mean, it keeps getting better. I tell you, it keeps getting better. And great entertainment. And then Friday's the golf outing. And then 2 years ago, we started bowling with the legends on Saturday out there at Suburban Lanes. Our friends there at Kegler's and such. And we end up there on Saturday. So it's really a 4-day event that, at the end of the day, probably donates, 35 or 40,000 to the hospital through the Joe's Nose Kids group. And, it's become and it has been and will be maintained, through a bunch of guys that give their heart to it. And it's really cool. It's really special. A lot of fun. We do it right there in Lakeview. We play the golf at Lakeview, and we keep it all right there in the Morgantown area, which is where we all spend our time. Is and for us, every time I go back to Morgantown, man, I feel like I'm 20 years old. Here I'm gonna be 63, and it's like even though you see all the growth and all the change. Hell, the first time I got back there when they had done that exit out there to Uniontown out near Cheat Lake, they reconfigured all that. Hell, I was on my way to Uniontown looking around going, wait a minute, this isn't right. Where's Ruby and Kevin? What the hell just happened? So we've seen so much growth and change, which is great. That's what we want to see. That means we're doing okay, But for us, I drive down that one road just to in my mind's eye remember what Sunnyside looked like. Because after that '84 Penn State game, the rest of that story, about 3 o'clock in the morning, me and my two roommates, Brad Hunt and Jack Kessler, we're sitting in the house. Hey man, we're hungry. No, wait a minute. How much money we got? I think we had like $6. Man, let's go down to the Superette down there. They got them 25-cent hot dogs. We'll just go get a bunch of hot dogs. We got to eat something. I'm hungry. Of course, we didn't get out of the stadium that night until 11-something. We go down to Sunnyside. It's 3:30 in the morning. And there's got to be 5,000 people in the street. Fires are burning. They're on the rooftops. And we're standing right there when you come down the hill. I don't even remember the names of the roads, but the old stadium was there to the left, and Sunnyside went up to the right. And we were standing right there where that traffic light is on the corner. and we're looking up the road, and it's just a sea of people. They got that's when they had right there on the end of the road was a bunch of National Guard guys with face shields and shit. Excuse my language.
It's all good.
Oh my God. And we're standing there, and somebody, I can't make this up. Somebody yells, they were right up on top of that first building, and they were up on the roof and everything, and I hear somebody yelling, look, there they are. There they are. Of course, we had all three of us had mohawks back then, and we're standing there, and everything like turned and looked, and all of a sudden it parted like the Red Sea. And we walked up that street like, I can't tell you what I feel like right now. I feel like I'm gonna go right up through the ceiling. We went down there to get hot dogs. Well, we ended up down there watching the sun came up with them Mountaineer fans, man. It was unbelievable, man. What a scene. What a scene. And to be part of that, so every time we go back, no matter how old we are, we're transported to a time in our life. It's wonderful. It's wonderful to be relevant now. But for us, we're back to, what we endured in the locker rooms and the weight rooms of those days and what it meant to us, and we all did it together. And if you came out of a Neyland program, you knew what Neyland was all about. And, and then of course, there's Rich. Rich came out of Neyland's program, now back at the helm. So, we've all come full circle now. It's exciting. It's an exciting time to be a Mountaineer, and it always is. Once a Mountaineer, always a Mountaineer, as we say.
Yeah.
And again, dude, the people that I get a chance to run into and meet and bump it. Down here in Florida, you go out somewhere to hang out. And, of course, I'm always wearing a West Virginia hat at least. And it's like, hey, West Virginia. I'm like, yeah. I'm like, are you from West Virginia? And they'll say, yeah, I'm from wherever. No, I'm just a fan or whatever. It's cool, man. It's cool. We're everywhere. Good stuff.
Absolutely. Well, real quick before we let you go, give us the quick details,
Yes,
if they're finalized yet, of your event week that you guys have coming up this summer.
Actually, there's a website you can go to. It's JOZNOZWVKIDZ. So Joe's Knows WV Kids.com. And all the information's right there. We got a Facebook page. Just look up, I think the Facebook page is Joe's Knows Kids. That's the group we put together. The entity that we built, the nonprofit, that's been maybe about 10 years that got going. And heck, this will be our 11th year in Morgantown, so it's pretty exciting. But 36 years running, brother.
Absolutely.
Didn't miss it. We slid under the radar. Even the COVID year, we didn't miss. We made it happen. And we had our gig on Friday, and they closed the state on Monday. So, but we ain't missed in 36 years, and it's pretty cool.
Yeah,
pretty cool.
So again, for those that need that, again, JOZNOZWVKIDZ.com, and that is July 9th through the 11th. Starts on Thursday with the Legacy Experience at Tropics Restaurant and Bar, and it goes until Saturday, as Joe mentioned, the Bowling with the Legends at Suburban Lanes. My friend, I appreciate your time. Thank you. Thank you for your recollections of Mountaineer football and playing for Coach Don Neyland, and also giving us a sneak peek for this year's event. We look forward to that, and keep us up to date with what's going on with that, and we look forward to it, brother.
Hey, thank you. I always appreciate the opportunity to reminisce and talk about it, but I will leave you all with this. We're going to be a pretty good football team this year, and we're all excited about it. So, the past is wonderful, but it's all about the present and the future and where we're headed. So we're all excited about this upcoming football season. You'll see me up there. I'm coming to a couple games. Let's go. Let's go Mountaineers. Once Mountaineer, always Mountaineer. Appreciate you, Taylor.
Yep,
Thank you.
Absolutely. There he is, Brian Jozwiak, former WVU offensive lineman. Again, check out his website, JOZNOZWVKIDZ.com, July 9th through the 11th. Break to take here. We're going to be joined by former Charleston Gazette Mail sports editor and WVU beat writer Mitch Vingle on the other side of this break. This is the All Eers Podcast.
HD Media Game Day is your streaming home for the best in live high school sports across West Virginia. Featuring football, basketball, soccer, and more, HD Media Game Day brings the action to you for free, exclusively on our YouTube channel and at hdmediagameday.com. When you can't make it to the game, HD Media Game Day has you covered.
Oh, good gravy. The kind made from real premium sausage. The kind that's smothered over deliciousness. The kind you can only get at Tudor's Biscuit World. That's the gravy that's oh so good. It's the perfect topping to your biscuits or your taters and even makes a delicious side. It's oh so good gravy. Tudor's Biscuit World. We're dripping with oh good gravy.
Final break here of the newest edition of the All Ears Podcast. Appreciate Brian Jozwiak for joining us and talking everything Mountaineer football, along with his upcoming event from July 9th to the 11th. If you haven't already, go in our description, check it out. All details will be in our description, so be sure to check that out, along with all of our social media pages. You can follow us on Twitter at Gaz Sports. It's GAZ Mail Sports, on Facebook at HD Media Sports, and on YouTube, HD Media Game Day. It's that time again, and it's Vingle's Views, the newest edition. Last week we talked about the Mount Rushmore of WVU football giants and greats, and we kind of teased it in our last episode about who we think the greatest WVU football coach is. And we are pleased to be joined by former Charleston Gazette Mail sports editor and WVU beat writer Mitch Vingle. Mitch, welcome back to the program.
Well, I don't know if I can follow up after Jozwiak, but we'll give it a run. I'm looking forward to this. I'm really looking forward to what you have to say on this topic.
Yeah, I mean, listen, you can go down a lot of different ways. I kind of know where you're going to go with this, but let's just start there. When you look at the long noted history of WVU football and the success that this program has amounted since its inception in the late 1800s, who do you believe is the greatest WVU football coach of all time?
Well, personally, I have to go with the Godfather, Don Nehlen. I got a close-up view of that. When I was in high school, when I was in college, it's when Frank Signetti was there when I was a freshman. And it's funny because I just read a story by Stuart Mandel of The Athletic going over the Signetti family and Kurt Signetti, who I actually graduated with, his success with Indiana this year. And, it just brought back memories because that first year when I was a freshman, they were 2-9. And then when Coach Nehlen came in, it was 6-6 and then 9-3 and beating Florida, in the Peach Bowl with, Oliver Luck and all that. And, it just went from there. He's a College Football Hall of Fame member. He's school's all-time winningest coach. Had 15 first-team All-Americans, 28 total. 80 players from 1980 to 2000 that were NFL players. Won, National Coach of the Year awards like Walter Camp, Bobby Dodd. I mean, I could go on and on. 13 bowl games. 88 and 93 went undefeated during the regular season. Played Notre Dame in the national championship. And, he was just an all-around good guy. I mean, I don't know how to say, he took some chances on a lot of kids and really developed. It's not like he got, of course they didn't have the stars for recruits and all that at that time too much, but he brought kids in. I remember, and he developed them. He had that 1990 Ronaldo Turnbull, Reggie Rembert, Mike Fox. He had 7 players, and that's Major Harris wasn't drafted until the 12th round, but he had 7 players drafted. The year before, he had 8 players selected. So I just I know that there have been some flashes of the other coaches, and you could definitely go back to Ira Rodgers and all that. But to me, like I said, the Godfather is the guy. Don Nehlen's the guy for me.
So as much as I would love to agree with you, and I normally do side with you on a lot of different of your takes, I think this might be the first time you and I actually disagree with something. As surprising as that is, for as often we've had you on through 14 episodes already, this might be the first time I'm actually going to say I disagree with you. So
okay, I'm looking forward to this. I'm fascinated.
So I love your explanation of what Don Nehlen did. You look at his first season in 1980, 6-6, then routed off 3 consecutive seasons of 9-3. Okay, then he goes 8-4, 7-3-1, 4-7, 6-6, then 11-1, which came in '88 when they played for a national championship and lost to Notre Dame, and we know that story. Then after that, a couple of, I don't really want to say rocky years because they fall up in '89 going 8-3-1, but then you go in a 3-year stretch, 4-7, 6-5, and then 5-4-2, and you had the historic '93 season when you go 11-1. Then I don't want to say this in a rude way, I don't, but I also want it to be known too that after that '93 season, after having 2 11-win seasons in about 6 seasons, things get interesting, I guess you could say. You go 7-6, 5-6, 8-4, 7-5, 8-4, 4-7, 7-5. And you look at the players that were at WVU in that time period, and obviously you think about a couple of guys off the top of your head. You have Chad Johnson, who is a West Virginia guy, a really successful quarterback, but then in '96 his backup was Mark Bolger. And eventually Mark Bolger took the reins in '97, and then that's an NFL quarterback. So then I'm just looking at a lot of these guys that he had on his rosters towards the end of his career. I know you could easily talk about those teams that he had early on, but you look at those later years, and I think this is where I'm going with this. '93 is where it should have stopped. Maybe you could say 95 after going 5-6. But when you have the NFL talent that he did, like an Amos Zaraway, like a Mark Bolger, like an Anthony Becht, the list can go on, especially in the mid to late 90s. I respect Don Nehlen first and foremost. I want that to be noted now. I do. But the later years, I feel, are speaking a lot more loudly than what happened in the late 80s, early 90s, if that makes sense. And again, Don Nehlen, I agree with you wholeheartedly. Godfather of WVU football, what he accomplished, winning as football coach in Mountaineer football history, I don't think that will ever be touched in just what he did. He also laid the foundation, as you said, in a lot of different ways. He was the first coach in the new stadium, going from Old Mountaineer Field to Milo Pushkar Stadium, which is still called New Mountaineer Field by many. You look at what he did, first national and only national championship appearance in '88, as I mentioned, a plethora of great players. But again, those later years after '95, especially let's just say after '94, are where I get hesitant. And then I look at Rich Rodriguez. I know that he was only there for a small sample size. I get it. He was only there in his first stint for 6 seasons. I get it. But, well, technically 7. I'm sorry, 7. But you look at what he did. He went 3-8 his first season. until last season, that was his only losing season at WVU. You go down the list of what Don Nehlen did losing season-wise. I'm looking right there, 2, 3, 4. He had 4 losing seasons in his 20-year career. Now, granted, that's a very small number. I get it. It's 20%. But you look at Rich, 3-8, and then he rattles off a 9-win season, and then back-to-back 8-win seasons, and then he goes 3 straight seasons of 10 wins or more. He had multiple BCS Bowl appearances. Still talked about that 05 Sugar Bowl. You can even throw in the Gator Bowl when they beat Georgia Tech, who, by the way, had an NFL wide receiver and future – no, he already is in the Hall of Fame – an NFL Hall of Famer, Calvin Johnson.
Yeah, he was pretty good.
Yeah, he was okay. He was okay. But I think you hit the nail on the head. I'm going to say this along the line with Rich as well. Here's probably the best way to say this, and how we're kind of seeing this both ways. It seems like the Kobe Michael Jordan discussion is kind of like how this is. Jordan is Nehlen, Kobe is Rich Rodriguez. And what I mean by that is there's similarities with both of them, because whenever people watch Kobe, they think, okay, that's Michael Jordan. You look at what Rich Rodriguez has done at WVU. What's he known for? He's getting the best out of his players, that hard edge mentality, and he's also really good at developing young football players. Okay, that's exactly what you just said with Don Nehlen. So I think the developmental side of things is a fantastic point by you, and I want to carry that over with Rich, just because look at the guys that he had: Pat White, Steve Slayton, Owen Schmidt. Those 3 right there, 2 of the 3 right there, Pat White and Owen Schmidt, 2 under-recruited players end up playing in the NFL. Regardless of how much they played in the NFL, they got to the NFL and they played on Sundays. So you have that. The NFL discussion is one thing, but what he did with the talent that he had in a time period where college football, as I said last week, arguably in the 2000s, a lot better than what we've seen since then. From 10 to now, I would argue 2000 to 2009 is one of the best decades of college football we've seen. So I think in a lot of ways, what Rich did with his guys in an era where college football was at its height, again, Tim Tebow, Reggie Bush, Matt Leinart, Sam Bradford, Colt McCoy, a lot of these guys, he had WVU right up there in that mix. Now, granted, I know where a lot of people are going with where I'm going to go with this. I know 13-9 is going to be the first thing that people get brought to mind. I get it. But when you look at what he built at the same time, I think if he handled it differently, I think Mountaineer fans would have been fine. Granted, I was young. I'm still young and naive. But I think if he would have handled that differently and potentially have gotten West Virginia to the national championship before leaving for Michigan, I think people's the taste in their mouth would have probably been different if he would have handled it a lot differently. And I think he would be the first to admit that.
Well, I think that people agree with you to a point because of that stretch that you mentioned. I mean, what was it? 3 straight 11-win seasons? I don't have the
3 straight 10-win seasons. They had two back-to-back seasons of 11 wins, and then I don't want to call it 11-win season his final year because he was 10-2 before he left, and they played in the Fiesta Bowl. That's the 11th win, so I don't want to consider that one his 11th. So I'll just say he had 2 11-win seasons.
So yeah, I mean, really, we talked about this the other day, and I didn't know exactly where you were going, and I kept thinking, well, who else would you bring up besides Don Nehlen? And Rich is really, to me, the only argument.
Yes.
And I think you made it well, because of the zenith, that Rich had with those guys. I mean, there were times when I was covering at Taylor when I thought I was just blown away when they were on offense and didn't score a touchdown. You know, it was to that point where you thought that they were going to score every single time they touched the ball. It was magical. It was crazy. I think it also that it was good that you narrowed it to best WVU coach, because if you look at what Rich did after WVU, not so great, right? Don Nehlen, he had those down years, but it almost seemed like Mountaineer fans came to expect, okay, he'd have a great year, down year, a little better year, great year, down year. You know, there was like this, it seemed like there was a cycle, and people kind of understood the cycle. While Rich, like you mentioned, you know, for a while there, it was just kick butt, you know, back to back to back. So I give you kudos for your argument, and I still stick with the Godfather. But I give you kudos.
Well, listen, it's like the LeBron-Michael Jordan debate. I don't think there's a clear-cut answer as to whom it may be. But I think there are arguments for both sides saying this is why you could go this way and this is why you can go that way. And I think that's how any debate normally goes. And I think with this debate, especially with it being Mountaineer football, a lot of people are so opinionated with it because they care so much that you're going to have a different answer every single time, 100%. Mm-hmm. And
obviously times change also.
Right.
And now just think about now what we're going to be dealing with. You're going to be looking at coaches in a completely different light. Mm-hmm. I mean, even Rich Rod, you're going to look at him differently now than you did when he was coaching W last time because of the NIL, and pretty much you're almost like a buyer at a retail store. You know, you go out and buy your players these days, and then you coach them up.
And I think the other side of it too is, and I'm interested with your perspective with this, because the only other person, now granted he only coached 3.5 seasons, I think, maybe 4, is Bill Stewart. That's the only other person I could think. Now granted, a lot of those guys that he had early on were Rich Rodriguez players, but he still goes 3 consecutive seasons of 9 wins. He goes 9-3, 3 straight seasons, and he leads that team to arguably one of the program's biggest victories of all time in the 2008 Fiesta Bowl, beating an Oklahoma team and Sam Bradford that were just different on a lot of realms, playing in the Big 12 back then, or Big A, whatever it was back then. Regardless, you could throw Bill Stewart in there, but the only thing is his sample size is so small compared to a Don Nehlen or a Rich Rodriguez. And I think Rich and Don are the two that you could throw in there, and that's about it, honestly. I mean, I know. Granted, you could throw Dana Holgerson in there, but I take that immediately to the curb, and I'm like, listen, he had 1 10-win season, one,
yeah,
and it was the last.
Orange Bowl was his big deal.
Yeah, and then what did he do after that? He went and played the Cactus Bowl, and he had Skylar Howard as his quarterback. Now, granted, all due respect to Skylar Howard, and I honestly, I'm going to show my age again, I enjoyed watching Skylar Howard. But, again, and this might be another thing too, Mitch, I want to get your perspective with this, going back to Rich and Don. I think in regards to, how can I say this? I think in regards to relevancy to this day, I would argue that Rich's teams between 2005 to 2008 are still talked about more than any 3 to 4 year stretch that Don Nehlen had. Agreed? Disagreed?
Yeah. I agree with that. Yes, absolutely. And it was the most thrilling to watch, really, those 3 years. You know, now you have to go back to Major Harris. I mean, he was, you know, like we talked about the other day, he was electric. He was the first one to really, you know, the lightning hit West Virginia with him. And then with Rich and those guys, I mean, it was like lightning. You know, you had a few guys there, but you know, one guy, you know, and I know the guy with the highest winning percentage, though. I remember I worked with Mickey Farfari, who many people remember, and he always stumped for Ira Rodgers, who had the highest winning percentage of all time. But I think he won 15 games or something. You know what I mean? So
yeah,
it's hard to even consider him. But Mickey always stumped for him. That's for sure.
Yeah, and I think, and I hate that I brought it up just because of I know Coach Neyland. I've met him before. I've heard so many stories, and we heard Brian Jozwiak talking about him in the last segment. I get the magnitude of the name Don Neyland has on a lot of Mountaineer fans. I get it. I 100% get it. As a guy that follows the Mountaineers since I practically came out the womb, pretty much told I bled blue, gold and blue coming out of the womb. Sorry, that was a little PDA. But anyway, you know, when you look at a consistency, though, of a head coach at the football rank in the sport of football at WVU, Rich Rodriguez is that. Now, granted, again, I know the Michigan departure hurt, stings, whatever word you want to throw in there. I also understand that last year's 4-win season also hurts. But let's reevaluate this again whenever Rich does call it quits for good, because maybe that's something where I may have to change my answer. And I will say this: if Don Neyland would have won a national championship in '88, I would 100% just said there's no debate. You won a national championship, no debate. Period. Same thing with Rich. If Rich would have taken that team in 07, 08 to a national championship, no discussion. None. Yeah. So, you know, I know history does not always fare with the Mountaineers. I get it. But, again, from a consistency perspective, in the amount of time that he did, I think that is notable compared to a Don Neyland. Again, you're looking at losing seasons, 4 losing seasons compared to 1 in his first stint, and just call it 2 in total, and we'll throw last year's in the mix. Again, I know times are different, but the fact that he only had 1 losing season in what I'm considering arguably one of the better decades in college football, that is 100% notable in my book.
Yeah.
So.
I think it's fascinating. I think it's a fascinating discussion, and you know, I have so many memories. You know, with Coach Neyland, I could go on that, and actually with Rich also. But it's a fun discussion. Certainly, you know, the parameters. We all look at things just a little bit different. But yeah, you're talking about had that 2007 season with Rich gone out, or had you know, Major Harris not gotten hurt, and West Virginia would have won that national championship back in the day, and everybody remembers that at the end. I mean, I was watching you know, ESPN all morning, and everybody's down on Joe Mazzulla. Why? Because
ridiculous.
Because they lost that series against Philadelphia, and if you step back and look, Joe Mazzulla has the best winning percentage of any NBA coach in history. And a lot of people are now calling for his head. So when you get in that coaching, there's a lot of parameters, a lot of people looking at you, you know, all different kinds of ways. So
yeah. Yeah, no, I don't disagree. But again, great discussion as always. I think, again, you can go down any avenue and you still find a way to find the positives, but also find the light in it as well. So I think this was a really good discussion. Again, I know a lot of people will call me out and be like, well, you're younger, so you don't understand. Well, I kind of do understand. This is my job. So
Right.
I kind of have to respect the history just as much as I want to look forward towards the future. So and I've been following it since I came into the world. So
Different opinions is what we're all about, and that's what makes good discussion and debate. And I love it. You don't always want to have the same perspective or the same opinions, or life wouldn't be very fun, would it?
No, it would not. I know mine wouldn't. Well, my friend, I appreciate your time as always. Thanks again for joining us on your edition of Vingle's Views this week. Again, healthy discussion, great discussion as always, and look forward to chatting with you next week.
All right. Sounds good, buddy.
All right.
You take care.
Yes, sir.
Bye-bye.
There he is, Mitch Vingle, former Charleston Gazette-Mail sports editor and WVU beat writer. That'll do it for us on this edition of All Ears. Be sure to follow us wherever you get your podcasts, including Spotify, Apple Podcast, and YouTube as well. Be sure to follow me on Twitter at Taylor_Kennedy7. And we'll be sure to chat with you all and see you all and hear from you all next week on the latest edition of the All Ears podcast. This is your host, Taylor Kennedy, signing off.
You have been listening to the All Ears podcast, powered by HD Media.